the thing always comes to me. I've talked about this before in various things. Is there's these lightning moments in our life, like lightning, as in lightning strikes, and sometimes they're great. You know, someone wins lotto. It's a lightning strike. You know, for whatever reason, in that moment, in that thing, it happens, and then there's bad ones. You know, that people walk out to work in the morning, and then they don't walk home again from work because they die unexpectedly during the day. So just a horrible, awful, revolting day. And I know that we're pretty light-hearted here, and whilst we are truthful and accurate, we do it with a smile on our face. I mean, I don't really feel much like smiling tonight. I kind of feel like giving this beautiful man and a beautiful friend, as many online are saying, a bit of a, I don't want to say send off. That sounds too grandiose. You know, some recognition for a very sad day in New Zealand and in New Zealand politics. Chewy, what you got? Anything you want to start off with?
I think something like this, when it's a public figure. I mean, you said yourself, would we have the same reaction if it was someone that didn't have a connection to the show, or whose politics, say, didn't align, and morals didn't align with us as much as his very clearly did? I think the shock factor would still be there.
Yeah.
Like,
especially if they were 49. It doesn't matter who it was.
Yeah.
If they were 49 with 2 young children and a partner, it's like shit. It's bad.
And I think that's a very human reaction. And I think, you know, when I saw it, I jumped on my social medias and some that I don't use anymore, just to get a vibe. And one of the comments that popped up, one of the commentators that popped up, really surprised me. It's someone that I do not have a very high opinion of.
Right.
And it was Leo Malloy's comments on Twitter,
Right.
which were probably the most genuine and human-like I'd seen out of him. And it was just recognition of the fact that he was someone that worked very, very hard for his communities and was a decent human being that just so happened he didn't agree with politically.
Yeah.
But that was it. And I wouldn't have expected a comment from someone that is so abrasive.
Yeah.
And I think when you see people's reaction from across the political sphere, all react in the same way. You know, he's had a long association with Labour, so it made sense for Labour to drop some very kind comments in there, and it very obviously affected members of the Labour cabinet who have close dealings with him. You know, it would have been absolutely gutting for his Green colleagues, but I'm talking about the other side, the people that acknowledge, even if they don't agree with him politically, that he was a fantastic asset for various communities. And I think a lot of people had high hopes for him coming into Parliament as he was. I saw that TVNZ carried his maiden speech. I would encourage people to go and watch it. Maiden speeches are so important. It's a marker of what it's their mission statement. And Efeso's is excellent, is really, really good. And I hope whoever steps into the massive hole that he leads is someone that is going to carry that flag first and foremost into the job.
A well-functioning democracy needs a strong opposition, right? That's how the best democracies work. So if you are in the opposing political camp, you want quality people like Efeso to be around, to push back, to push you, to find where the thing is, because democracy doesn't work with a strong government and a weak opposition, or the other way around. There needs to be a strong opposition, and he was a first-term MP, but obviously with a wealth of political experience and community service. And so he would have functioned for the next 3 years as an amazing opposition MP, learning the ropes. And then who knows? Could have been involved with also a strong government, depending on what happened at the next election or the one after that. I just want to say again, we are going to open Discord tonight. Okay, this is the plan for the show. We're going to do Efeso Collins stuff for as long as it takes. And that's where we'll take some people on calls if they want to come through and do Discord. And then, depending on how long it takes, if we want to do a couple of little stories at the end of it, which are on other topics, we'll do that. And if we don't, we'll just do this and nothing else, because we can do that. We don't have to do what TVNZ News does and did your Efeso Collins story and then move on to your next story and then the next story. We don't have to do that. We can do whatever we want. So if you're interested in all, and I'm only looking for people who want to, share some thoughts about Efeso. That's the only topic of conversation on Discord. Okay, the only one. There you can come along, and over here, if you're watching us, is the waiting room. Drag yourself into the waiting room. You might be there for 5 minutes. You might be there for 15 minutes. So don't freak out if we don't come straight to you. And wait in the waiting room. And if you do that, at some stage, we'll drag you across in the first part of the show, which is going to be just about Efeso. Now, Chewy, in saying that, I did just say we've got somewhere you guys can put your money tonight. And that is to the charity that he was doing some work for. If anyone was going to do a super chat or something tonight, if that's what you were about tonight, like you guys are so generously do sometimes, don't. But head to Child Fund Water Run. It's childfund.org.nz, and this is what they've put up on their site. Our beautiful friend Efeso. Efeso joined the Child Fund Water Run because he is driven to support the Pacific and because he believed in the cause. Before the race, we spoke about how hard it is to put yourself and your family first when you commit to a life of service. Now he's gone suddenly, and our hearts are breaking for his wife Fia and 2 girls and his family. Aotearoa, New Zealand and the Pacific have lost a leader who found his strength in the community, who would have continued to make our region and the world a better place. In life and in rest, you bring us together, Efeso. Blessed is the moon, for it shall return. So if you were going to be someone who was going to do a super chat tonight, whether it was $2 or $20 or whatever, don't do it tonight. And if you weren't going to do a super chat, maybe you might think about going to Child Fund anyway and making a donation. You can see there's a big button right there that says donate now. And if you're listening to this in an audio podcast not live, or you're watching it not live, childfund.org.nz, you can go there anytime and make a donation to the work they're doing, because the work they're doing was supported by Efeso, and I want us tonight to go to support Efeso and what he was about. And he was about that, so let's be about that at least for tonight. I mean, at least for tonight. So, Chewy, I think we'll just start the show with the TVNZ story. I was going to play the full speech that James made from the Greens, James Shaw made, but there's a little snippet of it in this. I think this is quite a good synopsis of what's happened through the whole day. Now, I don't know if we need to say trigger warnings, but there is footage in this story of Efeso doing the charitable thing. So nothing I'm very impressed that there's been no imagery from anyone in the media that I've seen today about Efeso being tried to be helped by medical staff, right? I'm glad we don't see that anywhere. But there is footage of Efeso in this story, carrying the buckets of water, doing the actual thing at some stage before he collapsed. So if that is upsetting to you, I mean, maybe you'd want to turn off or turn away, or I'm not sure, something, but just letting you know that is actually there. And whilst Chewy gets his camera and stuff going, we shall have a look at the story from One News tonight.
There's been an outpouring of emotion as tributes pour in following the sudden death of Green MP Whaanana Efeso Collins. Parliament's been suspended as colleagues, friends and family grieve. The long-time advocate, community leader, councillor and mayoral candidate collapsed at a charity event in Auckland. Kim Baker-Wilson reports.
His final moments
Here we go!
were of giving back. A charity drive for Child Fund, raising money for clean drinking water in the Pacific. Then, suddenly, the unthinkable. Around 9 o'clock, Efeso Collins collapsed. There was a major and swift response from emergency workers. For almost an hour, they tried and tried hard to save him. He didn't make it. There was shock, stillness, and togetherness, and grief.
And the bro was giving his time and his, it's just an incredibly sad day. I believe his impact was only just beginning.
This was in Auckland. At Parliament, his party, his colleagues were only just finding out.
The news has come as a profound shock. And our absolute priority is to Efeso's wife and to his young girls.
Members, it's my sad duty to formally inform the House of the death of our colleague, Whaanana Efeso Collins, who served as a Green MP in this Parliament.
I acknowledge Efeso's wife, Fia, and their 2 young daughters, as James just so said, who sat in this place only just last week to hear the husband and the father that they love so much deliver his maiden speech.
This wasn't the day's first silence. That was back at the charity event he'd been taking part in. And as he was being taken away, tributes for him began arriving.
We were all shocked when we found out. And so for me, I'm just going to wait for Fia and the family to decide how we can support them now.
Support that has been ongoing through the day. Kim Baker-Wilson, One News.
The son of Pacific immigrants, Collins' life was dedicated to serving a community that's now mourning his death. Pacific correspondent Barbara Drever reports.
We'll just pause. We're not going to stop. I'm going to play the whole thing through, but just this is horrific. It's horrific. It's unbelievably sad. I mean, I see people in the chat talking about how James Shaw was in tears. Yeah, same. This is just horrific. This is just all bad. I'm also going to play a friend of the show, Calvin Morgan, sent me the clip that the News Hub Nation, which is TV3, did on him, like a profile they did on him. And we're going to play that as well. We're just going to play it. It's 5 minutes long. It's a bit of a profile on who he is, who he was. So even saying that, it's horrible. But yeah, is there anything you want to start off with there, Chewy? Or
I did have a thought and it's gone. I think it's important to reflect on the fact that this man stood for what he believes all the way through, unshakable. And for a lot of people, like that aren't political tragics like us, may not be aware of how consistently he stood for the things that he believed in. So yeah. I'm glad that there's such a focus on this.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you said earlier, and I wrote it down, and I meant to say it. The show's a bit muddled tonight, guys. You'll forgive us. That he had lots of friends in Labour as well. I mean, Chewy, you and I were, when we heard Jacinda Ardern retiring, we're like, Efeso will be standing in Mount Albert then. So he was intertwined with that community as well. And then, he was obviously saw equal. I remember we asked Chloe Swarbrick why Greens and not Labour. I mean, Efeso was someone who could probably have done either, but he felt more drawn to the Greens. And so, yeah, he was known in that community by a lot of people and loved, it would seem, by a lot of people, Chewy.
Yeah. Certainly I saw from Carmel Cipolloni's statement in Parliament today that she was heavily affected by his passing. So, sometimes it's quite easy to write off politicians as not quite being real people capable of real emotions. And it's, especially for people like us, sometimes it's a little bit of a game. They're real people. They've got families, they've got friends, and they work in such a high pressure environment. It's you can't disconnect from them. Yeah.
Like, I mean,
and so to see it hit people that you usually think of like, oh, they must be tough skinned and in this sort of high pressure environment, and it's just obviously something that's hit them like an absolute bus, just really brings it home.
Yeah, I heard in James Shaw's speech at one stage he was saying, Marama and a couple of other people are actually on their way to Auckland because she's known Efeso for decades. So there's some of these people are their family, their whānau, their best mates, and again, if it was a 77-year-old serving member and who had grown adult children, it would be sad. But 49 with two small kids. It's a tragedy. All right, let's see what, because Barbara Drever's obviously got the story as the Pacific correspondent from the Pacific community. Let's have a listen.
Whaanana Efeso Collins spoke as he lived, a voice for those who had none.
If I was to inspire anyone by getting to this house and my work over the next 3 years, I hope that it's the square pegs, the misfits, the forgotten, the unloved, the invisible. It's the dreamers who want more, expect more.
This was just 6 days ago at his maiden speech in Parliament, where he acknowledged his humble beginnings. Growing up in Otara, his mum worked in a factory, his dad a church pastor.
He was a massive advocate for the Pacific community, a massive advocate for the vulnerable, for the poor, for young people, for South Auckland.
The Pacific MPs of Parliament who knew him so well, today struggling to find the words.
His lived experience would have been huge, and that's just gone in an instant. You can't replace people like that overnight. He was one of our great hopes for our future as Pacific people in Aotearoa.
Efeso Collins first showed his leadership heading the Auckland University Students' Council.
Why? Because you're going along to study, should you have to join a student body?
Because students are paying far too much. Students need someone who's going to go into and bat for them.
Later, he became an Auckland councillor, never forgetting his roots.
This is our chance to show we're talented, we're unique, we're beautiful.
During COVID, he used his voice and position to save lives.
Come here to get vaccinated because that's the only and foremost defence that we have against COVID-19.
He and his family were the brunt of violent, racist and other threats, particularly when he stood for mayor. He called it out and supported others facing the same thing.
He was the one that picked up that my safety was at risk. And then that day, he and Harry turned up to my place just before midnight, just to check on me and to make sure I was safe at home.
As a son of Samoan immigrants who made the mighty Otara 274 Southside Hard their home, I am well aware of the giants whose shoulders I stand on.
But the truth is, we stand on his.
A life of advocacy and service, Barb, and as we've just seen, what's his legacy to the Pacific community?
Simon, when Pacific people immigrate to New Zealand, all they can think about is making sure that their children thrive and have a good life, and they make sure that they sacrifice a lot to make that happen. So Efeso Collins' success not only realised the hopes and dreams of his parents, but of the wider community. Gosh, he was comfortable and courageous at so many levels, including at the national level, and he loved his family very much, beyond belief. They were his rock, they brought him great joy. He leaves behind his wife, Fia, 2 young daughters and a grieving community.
Life-taking part.
So there's the TVNZ. I mean, you know, it's a good synopsis of what's been going on for a very tragic day without going too much into it. I've got a couple other clips to play as well as that profile from TV3. But Chewy, is there anything in the chat, or is there anything we want to put out there now? Is there anything you want to say?
There's a few. There's been a few comments in the chat about you know, whether Mayor Brown made a comment or all of that sort of stuff. I've found that here on the Auckland mayoral page. Mayor Brown acknowledges the passing of Efeso Collins. It's a sad day for Auckland. He was a good man. My heart goes out to his family. Efeso is someone I had a lot of respect for, and although we competed for the mayoralty, we actually became quite good friends. The former Manukau ward councillor will be greatly missed by the governing body and many people across the wider council group. He was a bold Pacific leader and a champion for South Auckland. And the comment that I mentioned earlier from the unexpected quarter, Leo Malloy, just ignore that, but that just says that he's blocked. Thoughts and prayers to Efeso Collins' family. I happened to attend today to support my dear friend Butterbean. I had a laugh with Efeso about politics and Wayne before they commenced. Efeso was a remarkable man. We didn't agree politically, but as a person and as an orator, he was without peer. a beautiful, kind man gone far too soon.
Wow,
So
so, he was
I
there.
think
So that means Leo Malloy was there at the event.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge, some of the people that we dunk on the show and that we don't agree with personally, politically, whatever, when they get it right, when they show that they are actually real people. It's important to see it. I think this is a classic thing with politics, is sometimes it becomes very much us versus them in the politics, and the point of view is everything. But there's more to people than that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said, I'm not going to acknowledge this too much because I don't want to. There's some people in the chat talking about what a particular conspiracy theorist commentator put out today. I'll just say this really clearly. If that conversation comes up by anyone in the chat tonight, not people talking about what was talked about, but actually people who are wanting to have that conversation, then we're just banning you immediately. So I've already let Kiwi Skirt through a message no, and me and Chewy agree. If any of that bullshit, nonsense, conspiracy theorist stuff comes out during the show, it'll be an instant ban because I can't be fucked with it tonight.
It's not
basically.
the place.
It's not the place.
Not
Well,
the
there's no place for that conversation, but tonight particularly, we're not going to do that. So let's just have a look at it's not really exactly what we're talking about tonight, but it was one of the last times Efeso was on this show, and I watched it again. And I was like, the thing that's nice about this that I like is you get. We're not going to watch the whole 6 minutes; just the first comments that he's got. You get a real sense of who he was and what he thought of the community. So let's have a little look. The last time Efeso was on with us here at BHN. How do you think the mayor and the council have responded to this? So this is the floods in West Auckland.
Again, I've described it as sluggish, and I think it was sluggish. I understand that there's a whole lot of processes going on in the background where the bureaucrats are giving advice, but there comes a time when you just got to step into a leadership role and say to people, this is what I believe is happening. It's important that we get out and we front foot a lot of this activity. So I'm a bit disappointed that it came so late, and then rather than get out there and try and defend decisions that were made that were erroneous, then what we've got to do is say, look, let's just apologise for them and let's work together to get going. And I still think, there have been people, I'm not joining the chorus of people, especially locals out here, local leaders who've been calling for resignations. I'm not part of that camp. But I think what that shows us is the level of anger and frustration that people felt like it was too slow. And so, council's got to do better to work with communities. We've often at council had challenges around the way we engage with communities who don't normally participate in our consultation process. Well, this is an example of what happens when we're not tied in or hooked into the communities. We can't access people quickly like the local churches, like local youth organisations, because we haven't got that reach, and we've got to reset the way we think. We can't just do it, the same old consultative way. We've got to look at communities that are pretty diverse, that don't speak English as their first language, and that's got to be the approach that we take, especially for areas like this.
So I just thought that was quite a nice little bit about, everyone saying how he was focused on the community, and it was just a nice little tidbit that in the time that we spoke to him about the floods, it was always we have to make sure the community's safe. We have to make sure the community's involved. We have to talk to that community. We have to get that community involved. We have to bring them into the picture. And I just, I never met Efeso face to face. Never shook his hand. Never was in the same room as him. But I feel like we've lost a showmate, a bit of a mate. I saw him constantly on my Twitter feed. Like he would like half of the things we put out there. He would retweet some of them as well. So I know it sounds a bit silly because, I like that phrase, I don't pay much attention to Twitter because it's not the real world, which is true. But then you also get connected to people through Twitter, and you get connected to people through things like what we're doing here. So I feel connected to Efeso, even though I never shook his hand. And it just makes me sad. I'm sad today.
I remember when we reached out, and obviously we had him coming onto the show at such an amazing moment, talking about his run at the Auckland mayoralty and what was going on in Auckland at that time. Of like, wow, this is a great guest Like
Yeah.
we were stoked to have him there because there was so much that he could talk to. And I remember thinking, this is what I imagine a true community leader to be. He was advocating for his community, 100% for his community, and just really drawing people's attention to the fact that not everyone fits in the same box. You can't treat everybody the same and expect to get great results for everybody. And that's why we need the diversity in our leadership, in our decision making places, around the tables of mayoral groups and that sort of thing. You need people to stick up and say that's not going to work for these people, because otherwise they don't have anyone advocating for them and they get left behind.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you see people really hurting. I think with Efeso's passing, is that's just acknowledging how good he was at that. And then selfishly, after that interview, to have him, like we often chat to people either just before the show or after the show and that sort of thing. And he was just truly thankful for coming on our little show, and he had really positive things to say about what we were doing. And when we're plugging away and working so hard to do what we do, even just those sort of comments just put so much wind in our sails.
Yeah.
Of like, oh shit, okay, we are doing something that people see and people acknowledge and that sort of thing. So, you know, he was there for us at that moment.
That thing that he said about, I mean, it's a well-known phrase, like, I can see further if I've seen further, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. He used a version of that phrase in that TV1 commentary, and you know, TV1 said, well, we've been standing on his shoulders. And what you're saying, Chewy, is people who there's no rhyme nor reason as to why they should show us any kindness. There's no reason for them to show us any sort of give us any time. I always say to people, we don't deserve anyone's time. If we get them, that's great, but if we don't, and he was one of those people. Like, there's no rhyme nor reason for him to come on. He came on a couple of times, and yeah, sad. But there's a couple of other clips I'm going to play. I'm thinking, I still haven't decided yet about the Newstalk ZB angle, because I experienced something with Newstalk ZB today, which is it's not negative about the Efeso, obviously, but it kind of pissed me off. But I'll keep thinking about whether we're going to do that or not. But before we do, I might play something as well. But you want to say something first?
Oh, I just have one. Sorry, just something popped into my head. Really consistent comment around the Auckland floods, and obviously the mayoral reaction there is people doing, wow, what would have been the reaction to the Auckland floods if Efeso had won that mayoralty race?
Yeah.
And I remember that being just a real moment of people going, yeah, it wouldn't have been the same. It would have been different. Maybe politics does matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, let's show this. And look, you know, this is a different show because everyone's a bit down, rightfully so. But remember, with distance, nothing like what his friends and family are going through right now. And we normally cut in and out of these videos, and we make pithy comments along the side. This is just a profile piece on Efeso Collins on News Hub Nation. And I'll be honest with you, maybe trigger warning again, it's made me cry this afternoon. So if you're that kind of person, just giving you a heads up. But here's a little piece on who Efeso was and what he was all about, thanks to News Hub Nation.
Here in New Zealand at Middlemore Hospital, so just down the road from where we live in Otahuhu. So I'm the youngest of 6, which means in a good Samoan family, it means you have very little voice, if any voice at all. My mum, for many years, worked at Middlemore Hospital. She was the cleaner there. My dad was a Pentecostal church minister for a while, worked long hours. Dad was a taxi driver as well as being a church minister. His diction was beautiful as well. And so that was something we picked up because Dad was role modelling, speaking good English. He didn't like it when our words weren't crisp. My sister, who's just older than me, her and I wanted to be newsreaders because Dad wanted us to be crisp. You know, there was like the home world and the church world, and it was very ordered. A lot of things we were doing at school kind of contradicted what we were doing at home. And I think for all of us, we were challenged by the New Zealand world and the Samoan world, trying to get the best of both and understand that we were navigating 2 very different cultural worlds. Yeah. So bit embarrassed by this photo, but this is our whole family, and it looks like it's after White Sunday. So we have a thing called Lotu Tamaiti, which means children's church, and everyone wears white. But that's me in the middle with the tie on and in shorts, I'm not sure why, and the rest of my family, my brothers who are both taller than me. I played softball and rugby, but I was, in comparison to my brothers, I was useless. And so I needed to find something for me that I could be known for, and so I did debating. And I remember one day someone banging their hand on the desk, and it shocked me. Oh, wow, they've really got my attention. And I thought, oh, so that's all you have to do in a debate, you just bang your hand on your desk. But I met so many different people at university. I realised that there were lots of people that didn't go to church. I remember my first metaphysics lecture and her opening...
Sorry, I just noticed for the first. Did you see what was in the background there? Nandor Tanchos, right there.
Oh, true.
Yeah, I just noticed that in the background. Sorry, I guess I did cut into the storyline. We'll keep going.
Metaphysics lecture, and her opening line was, God is a woman. And I thought, oh my gosh, wait till I tell Dad that God's a woman. So we went home and we talked to Dad, and he said, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? So we were confounded by all of this, but faith's been a core for me. And as I've evolved as a person, I've realized that there are some things that I held like really strongly, and now those are things that I'm flexible with. That about 10 years ago, I came out and I was against marriage equality. As my thinking has evolved, I accept that people love in different ways, that people are allowed to love the way they choose. And that's why my views on that have shifted. You know, I've apologised to the Pasifika Rainbow community in particular, because I know people were hurt by those comments. So this is my beautiful wife, Fia, and we have been married now for about 11 years. We celebrated our anniversary on Sunday, a couple of days ago. And so, yeah, it's been a great marriage, hasn't it, dear?
I was really drawn to his passion for people, but he was really down to earth as well, somebody that you could share with, talk to, and that he was honest. Efeso being in the public eye, whilst we're really proud of him and we're cheering him on and we're encouraging him to be in that space, it can be quite challenging for our family, and I'm quite vocal, and sometimes being in the public eye is feeling like that voice is silenced. In certain situations that you have to be, you have to look and sound a particular way. Aww. And so I think that's what's hard, and you can't talk about it in the public. You just silently try to protect your family.
Our family's been through so much. I remember the challenge around the death threats. I think the challenge has been that they have to put up with it. And I think we choose to be advocates, but it's come at quite a personal cost. And I often think of our eldest daughter, Gabrielle, and we sat down and she said, Dad, why would people want to kill us? Because they named my family. And for me, I feel this huge sense of responsibility for my family. And it breaks me that they have to go through this. And that's an experience that we've managed and navigated, and I'm grateful to Fia and my girls. There's a letter here that Gabriela wrote to us on behalf of her and Asalemo, our daughters. And she said, Dad, I'm proud of you. I never heard those words from my own father, because it's probably not a Samoan dad thing to do, knowing that my baby is proud of me is enough to keep going.
Yeah. I want people to know, there's no Pacific Island person who might be in the next government, so people are relying on us to speak on their behalf. So that's what we're going to do. This is time to hit the hand on the desk, to throw the papers in the air and say we're going to do everything we can for this community. I think I bring the hood, and when I say the hood, I mean I bring attitude, I bring strong voice, but I bring a cultural relevance and respect that we might not have seen before. I want to bring that hood mentality and that hood heart into the place, because I'm not sure that people quite know what the real South Auckland is like. And I think we're pretty hip, pretty cool, we're relaxed, but we are strong and we're bold, and that's what I'm going to bring to Parliament.
Some Some people used to say.
So, would you like to talk now, Chewy? Yeah, I know. Look, it's just
old tin hat here doesn't feel anything ever. Just that acknowledgement of his family.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, sometimes you see almost lip service paid to this when it comes to politicians and public figures, is obviously their families pay a price.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's almost just blasé, like flipped out there. But to see him reacting to his partner speaking her mind about how it directly affects her, and then speaking on the absolute disgusting death threats that he had to deal with and that sort of thing, that saddens me. But at the same time, they didn't stop. And if you are on the receiving end of something like that and are paying such a personal cost and you keep going, what does that say about A, the strength of your character, and B, the cause that you're standing up for?
Yeah.
It's bigger than you.
Yeah.
It's bigger than the personal cost to you. And, you know, I quite often talk about, you know, what a leader is and what true leadership is. And obviously he's had some amazing people to follow in his life that he's modeled his leadership on. But the core thing I want to focus on here is that acknowledgement, unprompted, that he got it wrong and he thought about it and he reviewed and he changed his mind.
Yeah.
And we see from leaders of any cloth that they'll make a decision and they'll dig in the face of all questions, all evidence, and they won't change their mind, or they won't do it publicly. They won't draw attention to the fact that once they were wrong. But he did. And that shows, I think, one of the rarest qualities in any sort of leader. The ability to review and change based on new information.
Yeah.
And that would have meant so much to people, specifically in the Pacifica community as well, that someone could do that. Yeah.
It's that this is I don't think I'm giving it the due amount of respect, because I think it's much bigger and more important than this, but it's the idea of not being an ideologue, you know, not just always landing on the same side of things all the time for the reason that I believe that, just because I believe that, because that's what my side believes. And obviously he's had a church upbringing. I don't know if he got anything to do with church now, but his dad was a pastor and stuff. So in the Pacific Island community, that could be an easy reason why someone would be more restrictive on LGBT rights. But like you're saying, he learnt and he changed and he evolved and he grew.
That puts you up as an example to others.
100%.
So he made that path easier for others to go, well, you know, maybe I can shift my position.
Yeah.
He moved the needle.
Interesting comment from Mike here. I pretty much only got to know Efeso in this past half hour, seeing sides that really see in the public. It's a shame he was cut down before he showed his full potential. Yeah, it's an interesting on cut down before he showed his full potential, because the flip side to that conversation is he seems, you know, working through, I guess, what he did as a student, what he did in local boroughs, what he did for Auckland City Council, and then started to do with the Greens. He's probably done more and lived more of a life than most 80-year-olds will. He's probably had more impact in his life than 10 average lives would give for other people. So I agree about there was still so much more to come, but I think it's also important to acknowledge that so much was done as well. So much more was done than maybe many other people did. So,
yeah, and I think there we see, and we've seen from a couple of people there, you know, sometimes there can be some quite dismissive comments of people that have come into politics through student politics.
Mm-hmm.
but there's so much leadership potential that comes through the university political scene. Like all sides have people that have become interested in politics or active in politics through university. And I just find it interesting that in Efeso's case, again, it was advocating for people. It was advocating for that community. And in the case of, when he was there, they were talking about compulsory student fees and student union membership and that sort of thing. And I think in the fullness of time, those people that were against it and the reasons that they were against it, they have been shown to be that they were right. They didn't win that battle, but they were. I think they're shown to be right in the fullness of time.
The whole, this is a bit of a tangent, I suppose, but the whole idea about people who are involved in student politics who are now politicians, yada yada. Like, just to be fair, I want someone to be involved with student medicine who's my doctor. I want someone to be involved in student engineering who's my engineer. Why would it be a bad thing to have someone involved in student politics who's now a politician? It's actually just it's like the word woke or peace. It's just it's a saying people say that means nothing, because if you've been training to be a politician since you were 18, that probably makes you more qualified than someone who's a so-called business person, board member, who's never done it before and doesn't know really how to run a political party or a political scene. Just another way to look at it.